Matrixxx. I hope you had a wonderful weekend. I hope everyone out there is doing well. And yes, we do. We have a very, very important special guest today, and I'm so honored to have him take some time out to join the program. Oh, hey, grab your mute button. I think your mute button might still be on.
No, I just unmuted it. You're quite right.
Oh, there you are. Hello, sir.
I knew when I turned that thing on, I would forget to turn it off.
That's all good. We're glad to have you with us.
Yeah. Well, thank you. It's my pleasure to be here, gentlemen. Looks like you've got a fine show underway.
Hey, Matrixxx, check your mic, bud. Okay. I'm getting lots of people saying sound. Oh, okay.
Well, that's true. And I don't know, that's my journey. It's been like everybody's journey, I suppose, except I come out the other side of it with a little notoriety. When I say it's like everybody's journey, I suspect it's because most of us, I think, wind up in a place that we never dreamed we would be when we started the journey. It's not like you've got a roadmap and you figure, okay, I'm going from here to Cincinnati and I'm taking this route and so forth. No, you just say, well, I'm heading that direction somewhere. And you don't know what route you're going to take and you wind up someplace entirely different. That's certainly true in my case. I won't bore you with all of that, but I was a very typical American young man, I suppose. I really didn't have any serious thoughts in my head until I was married and had one and a half kids. Suddenly, somewhere along the line, I thought, hey, I'm a father. I'm a head of a household. I have a family. I'm responsible. Well, that word, responsible? What does that mean? You know, I was in the corporate world. I was climbing the ladder. I wanted to be a vice president of the company I was working for. I figured that was pretty easy if I just worked very hard and did all the things that I knew I was expected to do. We may come back to that in a moment. It's doing the things you're expected to do. That can be pretty dangerous. Anyway, that's what I was doing. I was climbing the corporate ladder and doing well, and everything was good. And then I ran across a pamphlet, a little silly pamphlet. So one of these days I have to dig it out of my archives. I know it's here somewhere, just so I could show it to people when I tell them about this. It was a pamphlet written by a college professor in a small Midwestern college. I've forgotten the name of it. I've forgotten his name, but it was something critical about the United Nations. And well, isn't that curious? I thought when I saw this thing, because I had come out of the school system, the public school system, the university system, all funded primarily by federal funds and corporations and so forth. And I had been taught the curricula. And the curricula was that the United Nations was our last best hope for peace. And I certainly believed that. I mean, why not? All I knew was what I was told. And I remember being being witness to all these photographs of them inoculating little children over in Africa and feeding people and helping people, and where there were hot spots and people were at war, they were there to help try and bring peace back to the community and all those things. This is wonderful. And the idea that all the nations of the world could get around a huge table and discuss and work out their problems rather than going onto the battlefield to do so. And then the exchange of commerce and the increase of standard of living and all these things. Now, what is it? Who could find anything wrong with that? So I approached this booklet with a critical title, and I thought, this is bunk, a college professor or not. But I read it, and it disturbed me because I thought, well, this can't be true, because the things I was reading were contrary to what I had been taught. And I just assumed that if I had been taught it in the school system, it must be true. Looking back on it, that's pretty amazing. But that was where I was. And so fortunately, I had some time off. The office that I was working out of for the company was in downtown Los Angeles, only about 3 blocks away from the big central library in Los Angeles. Well, I had never gone to the library. I had no interest in that. When I got out of the university, I thought, boy, I'm through with these books and all this stuff. This is no good. This isn't fun. And I thought reading books was what you had to do penance for something bad that you had done. It was punishment. And so I never thought I would go into a library, but I did. And I found out there was a thing called the Department for International Affairs or something like that. And I found books on the United Nations. And I went up there sort of curious about the things that this guy had said. And I thought I'll just read up on it and prove that he was wrong. Well, to make a long story short, everything I found was written by proponents of the United Nations. They're written by the United Nations Association, or people who were high-ranking officials or held high positions in the United Nations. They were all pro-United. There was nothing on the shelf that was critical. And I thought that was strange. But so I started to read these other books, and I began to smell a fish.
Yep.
Because I thought I can spot a hype when I read it and hear it, and this was hype all the way through. And I thought, they're selling something here. They've gone too far. I don't like what they're doing. It didn't sound honest to me. So I think it was sort of a bug was planted in the back of my head. And I didn't really do anything about it, but it was the beginning of the movement. And finally, I think somebody invited me to a meeting where they showed a film, a 60-millimeter film of a gentleman talking about similar things. His name was Robert Welch. He was the founder of the John Birch Society. And I didn't like the guy. I said, what's he saying all these nasty things? I said, I didn't like that.
Right.
I'm fighting all the way. But as I walked out, I picked up some literature. Well, it wasn't their literature, but it was some books and so forth. And that was the beginning. And still, it was just in the back of my mind, nothing really serious. And then you asked for it, so here it comes. I'm giving you all these details. Believe it or not, this is the short version. I had a client in downtown Los Angeles. The company I worked for was a large insurance company. And my job was to service the large companies, and some of them small companies, who had group insurance policies for their employees. So my job was to maintain those contracts and to periodically service the account and be there and answer their questions and put on periodic meetings for their employees to explain their benefits, answer questions, all that stuff. I was in insurance service and rate calculations and proposals and things like that. So I was early to the appointment. And as I sat there, the California Cotton Oil Company, I believe it was called. And I was sitting there in the waiting room, and I'm looking for a magazine to read, something interesting, Well, there was nothing but little magazines about the size of Reader's Digest. It was called The Free Man. And I'm looking for something interesting. Well, all there was the Free Man. And so I picked it up and I started looking at it. It was very simple, just plain drawings and a couple of photographs and some interesting sounding titles. And the one I read sitting there was a short article. I think it was called Let the Sun Shine, something like that. And it was an allegory. It was the story of this beautiful little community in a valley somewhere in the world. Everybody was happy. It's kind of a primitive but peaceful community. Everybody was well fed. They had crops. They had businesses. They went about their business. It was kind of an idyllic situation. But a salesman showed up one day, and he had an oil lamp to see. He was selling oil lamps. And he was telling them that this oil lamp, they really had to have it. And they said, why? We go to bed when the sun goes down. We got plenty of light. The sun is always shining here. And we don't need oil lamps. What do we need oil lamps for? And he said, well, you could extend your day. You could enjoy things in the evening if you had light after the sun went down. And they said, we don't want oil lamps. But he was persistent, and he was a good salesman. So he sold a couple of oil lamps. And what happened is that when these oil lamps started to burn, they gave off smoke. And a lot of people said, well, my neighbor's got one. Maybe I should have one too. Finally, everybody had an oil lamp, and it was true. They were able to stay awake into the early evening hours and see things with the oil lamps, but it was putting off all the smoke into the community. And it happened after a while that in the mornings when they got up, the smoke was still out there, and they couldn't see as well in the daytime because the smoke for the light at night was obscuring the sun. Until finally it got so bad, the smoke was so thick, they had to use the lamps all day long. And I thought, well, isn't that funny? And that was the first time of course, the lesson of the story was that there are natural laws at work in economics. And that when you think you can tinker with the natural laws, and you can tinker with them, and you can usually get a specific result that you're looking for. But if you're not careful, the side effects or the output or the negative, the downside of what you're doing will more than obliterate the benefit if you're not careful. And I thought, well, gee, that makes a lot of sense. So I thought I'd like to subscribe to this magazine. I looked around, and they had a stack of them there. And I thought, I'm looking around. I wonder if I could take this magazine. And it occurred to me that they want you to take it. Why would they have 20 of these things sitting on the on the table? So I slipped it in my briefcase. I'm embarrassed to tell this story, but they did have 20 of them there. I thought this is like a take one, and I took it home and I devoured it. It was the first time I had read anything that you might classify as the message of free enterprise, free market economics. And it was published by an organization called the Foundation for Economic Education, FEE. And so it was a free man. Anyway, so I subscribed to it. I read everything they put out. I decided to go back into the archives. I bought all of their past issues, and I even got them in bound volumes, and I got all these still in my library, all these back issues of the Free Man. I've read them all. I studied them all. I thought, this is really fascinating, and it makes a lot of sense. So that was the beginning of my awareness of a different worldview rather than the collectivist beehive that they were teaching in the universities. I won't go into all the details except to say at some point in my self-education and exploring literature that I had not been exposed to before, I discovered, I should say, that I had a crusader gene. I didn't know that. I mean, I never cared much about anybody else. I mean, it's not that I was cruel or indifferent. If somebody was in pain or suffering, or I would have empathy. It's not that at all. It's just that it was not part of my daily thinking of what are we going to do about mankind? What are we going to do about society? What are we going to do about preserving the constitutional liberties that we enjoy? I would never think of that, But in this process, I discovered I had a crusader gene, and I was getting angry, and I felt responsible. I felt personally responsible for doing something about this. So I quit my job. Logical, right?
Yeah, of course. That's the first move.
I quit my job so I could devote my full time to this, not having any idea how I was going to convert this crusader instinct I had into enough stream of funding to support my family. I just thought, well, somehow it'll work out. Well, somehow it did. But my poor wife, she almost had a fit. She said, what are we going to do? And I said, don't worry, we'll take care of it. I had no idea what we were going to do. So I launched off on my own, and I had gone through school, and I learned in school, I majored in speech and communications. So I knew something about in fact, I worked in a television station. I had worked in radio and all of that. So I knew about the professional side of communications. I thought I'll apply what I had learned and my own experience. I'll start making some little cheap uh, low budget documentaries. So that's what I started to do. I went on the lecture circuit, and I actually found some people that wanted me to speak, mainly because I was a free speaker. And I would speak before Kiwanis clubs and all that sort of things, and study groups. Yeah, free speaker. And but I cut my teeth on all of that. And first thing you know, the word got out that I was giving speeches on the United Nations, which I was. And I cut to the chase on this one. I got an invitation from a publisher to write a book on the United Nations, which I accepted. And that was my first book. I'd never written a book before in my life. I didn't think I could write. I was convinced I couldn't write, as a matter of fact. But I got this invitation, and they were going to pay me. I thought, well, that's not too shabby. It's their risk, really, not mine, but I'll do my best. And to make that story short, I found out I could write, and I found out I enjoyed it. I didn't know that. And so it was a good thing, because otherwise I might still be trying to be a TV producer or an actor or radio announcer or something like that. But instead, I found a new career because of that. And I discovered I liked going to the library when I really had some reason to go. And I discovered I really liked history. I hated history before because it was all about memorizing names, dates, wars, and so forth. But when I started to read real history books, which included the memoirs and the quotations and the diaries of the people who were living the history themselves, and all of a sudden I could feel the emotion and the passion of the people on the scene, like hundreds and hundreds, and maybe 1,000 years ago. In Rome, reading the personal stories of Theodora, the empress of the last emperor of Rome, who started off as a prostitute in the arena, and the emperor took a liking to her and brought her into the castle. And well, he was a drunk, and he was drunk all the time, and she started to take over his duties. And the first thing you know, she's running the whole empire. That's Theodora. I never knew anything like this. This is interesting history. So I found myself, I'm now and started being a library bug. And okay, now we fast forward, and I'm doing my thing and producing some low budget documentaries, making speeches. And then imagine that. Well, there was no place else to get it, because the stuff I was taking an interest in was not available as it is today. You talk about being shadow banned today and being blocked. None of this information, and it was known, by the way, I've discovered since, there were a lot of people who were writing things like that little pamphlet I discovered, and books, but they were never given good reviews. They were never in the bookstores. They were never recommended reading in the schools and so forth. They were there, but you had to go searching for them. So there's nothing new about today. It was way back in 1960 that this all started for me. So we fast forward, and I decided I was going to produce a documentary film on inflation, and I didn't know anything about that. And so I started to do some research. It didn't take long before I discovered that this thing called the Federal Reserve System, what was that, is an organization that actually creates the nation's money. And I thought, well, isn't that strange? Because I thought the government created the nation's money. And I looked it up, and no, in encyclopedia and some reference books, no, the money is really created by this thing called the Federal Reserve System. That's curious. So I thought, I'm going to do an interesting documentary on this. So that was my first mistake. I got interested in money and banking without having any background on it at all. And I thought, I'm going to become an expert, thinking that would be easy. Well, it was 7 years later that the book popped out of the pipe, and I had learned a lot along the way. And the book, of course, I'm referring to, The Creature from Jekyll Island, a second look at the Federal Reserve. And it was a hard road to follow, not because that the ideas were difficult, it's because there was so much obfuscation. I really discovered that, in my view, the people who were running the money and banking show were doing it in such a way to obscure it so that the average bloke would not have any idea what they were doing. Because if the American people actually knew what the Federal Reserve System was doing, why there would be pitchforks out in the streets, and there would be a revolution. There would be an end to the Federal Reserve System. It'd be very difficult to convince the average person, like I certainly was before I got into this. I was very average, and I knew nothing. That's what average means. But if anybody had told me back in 1960 that the Federal Reserve System was a cartel, that it was not a government agency, that it was a cartel, no different than a banana cartel or an oil cartel. It happened to be a banking cartel. And it was composed entirely of the heads of the biggest banks in the country, and that their whole purpose, as all cartels have as their sole purpose, is to advance the advantages and benefits of the members of the cartel. And whatever they might say about worrying about inflation or helping to stimulate jobs or all of the good things they talk about as the reasons they're raising or lowering interest rates or whatever, they're always talking about being for you folks. No matter what they say, you must understand that it's for them folks. It's their job to preserve and protect and advance the interests of the members of the cartel, period. And if somebody had told me that, and that's the reason we have booms and busts, and that's the reason that whenever the economy goes really bad and the banks are all in bankruptcy, that they get bailed out by the taxpayer and all of that sort of thing. And if anybody had told me that no matter what happens to the economy, booms or busts, the banks always do well, and I would have said, "Oh, come on, what are you, a bunch of conspiracy theorists or something worse? You're crazy, man." And because I thought I knew, this was a government agency and we would never allow anything like that. That's why this is America, man. Don't you know? This is America. This is the land of the home of the brave and the free and the protected, where our government protects us. I've never dreamed that we needed something to protect us from the government. So anyway, that's my story. And here I am at the end of this long journey. And I've had some notoriety writing books like The Creature from Jekyll Island, on the Federal Reserve. I've written another one that's received a lot of notoriety even today. It's called World Without Cancer. And it's the story of vitamin B17, which is nature's control for cancer. And this, of course, takes on the pharmaceutical industry, right, full on. Because when I came out of that research cycle, I was completely shocked by what I found. I thought the pharmaceutical industry and the medical fraternity was there to save lives and to make people healthy. And what I discovered was just, it's so discouraging even as I think of it today. And that is that the business model in the medical industry is not to cure disease at all, but to perpetuate disease, because that's the way they make their money. If everybody were healthy, there'd be no market for their drugs.
That's right.
Vaccines.
Mr. Griffin, real quick, let me just do a quick test. Guys, can you hear me out there? For some reason, they're saying my microphone isn't working correctly. Let me just hear from my mods really quick.
Yeah, we're trying to do a little bit of a test here, but Mr. Griffin, I tell you, it was a different time back then, and people trying to pay attention and really, before the internet, a lot of people in today's world don't quite understand what it took to find information or get information, or the pushback that you're getting from people who may want to publish the information or do the documentaries and stuff. And so, kind of what was the atmosphere around, you beginning to share this stuff with a mostly asleep public who were fairly ill-informed?
Well, the atmosphere was one of great disinterest.
Right.
It was apathy. I mean, I was on fire because I could see that this is not going to turn out well for the world or my country or my family or me. I mean, I was on fire. Something had to be done. And I was probably in those days a little more aggressive than I should have been. I mean, I wasn't actually doing this, but I think of myself in in a figurative way, going around grabbing people by the lapels and say, listen to me, I got to tell you about this.
You got to know.
Yeah, you got to know. Wait till I tell you what I found out. And I probably, ruined a lot of cocktail parties, the ones I went to, because I was always talking about these things. Nobody wanted to hear about that. First of all, they didn't believe it. And secondly, if it were true in the backs of their minds, they would say, if this is true, oh man, I'm in big trouble. I don't want to know about that. I don't even want to hear about this because it might be true. So I understand that psychology now. But so in those days, it was mostly apathy and people didn't want to hear about it.
Right.
Today, it's quite different. Today, it's more polarized that people either want to hear about it, they're hungry to hear about it because they know something is wrong. And they know now, they discovered what I discovered way back in 1960, that what is going on today is definitely going to affect them
right
now,
Right. Let's do that now. Let's look at that right now. Let me just real quick, let's make this, I want to show a couple of things that we've actually highlighted from you onto the show here. I think they're pretty familiar with it. Let's bring it over here and make it big, and let's just listen to this real quick.
We must not be led
Here we go.
into placing the blame for the riots, the civil disorders, on the Negro people of our nation. Even those few who are promoting hatred and violence in the black communities are not themselves the cause. They're merely being used by forces far bigger than they are to promote the violent phase of the revolution in America. Just as many white people are being used, I might add, by those same forces to promote the non-violent phase. Secondly, and this too almost goes without saying, we mustn't resort to violence either as a means of furthering political or social goals. And we must do everything humanly possible to discourage others from doing so. Third, we must not be fooled into thinking that the causes of our civil turmoil are such things as poverty, poor housing, lack of education, and similar social or economic factors. As a matter of fact, most of today's self-styled revolutionaries, black and white, come from good homes, could earn better than average incomes if they wanted to work. And in fact, they're products of some of the finest institutions of higher learning. We shouldn't be indifferent to the social and economic conditions of those in need, and we should do all we can within the concepts of economic and political freedom to improve those conditions. But let's not kid ourselves into thinking that these are the causes of our national problems today. Fourth, we must not look to the expansion of government and government programs as the solution. As I hope I've made it clear by now, this is exactly what the communists want us to do, because it's the very process whereby they hope to come to power in this country through nonviolent means.
Who is that handsome guy right there?
He's a very smart guy.
He looks familiar.
He does look familiar, and I think we have him right here on our guest. That is G. Edward Griffin. And what was the title of this expose you did, this documentary?
That was More Deadly Than War.
More Deadly Than War. And you can get that over on the Reality Zone on YouTube. Right over here is Mr. Griffin's Reality Zone. Only 6.65 thousand subscribers, guys. We need to turn that up to at least 7,000 today. So let's get that going for Mr. Griffin. Yeah. I also want to play one more, sir, that I think was very amazing. What's happening today as well?
The communists call not only for extensive chaos within the cities, but for putting to the torch every village, every forest, every field, and every barn. The plan is for raging fires from one city to the next. The reason? Well, first there's the value of sheer destruction. Secondly, it would force us to deploy our defenses and rescue units over the widest possible area. The communists point out that as long as our police and National Guard remain concentrated, they're invincible. But if they can be forced to spread out over the entire city and into the countryside as well, then they can be picked off from ambush one by one. And the third value of massive fire to the communists is psychological. The average American, they say, soft and decadent, when he sees billows of black smoke rising from one horizon to the other, when at night the only light he has to see by is the flickering red from flames leaping into the sky, he'll become paralyzed with fear and panic. He'll run away and hide. and do nothing to interfere with the guerrilla bands as they strike at the community's power centers.
Wow. I mean, today they call that global warming. I don't know if you've heard the reports, but some pretty amazing fires happening over there in California. And they were very reluctant to tell you that they were, being set on purpose. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, that's true. Fires are always being set on purpose to some extent. And so the question is, to what degree are they being set on purpose, not by pyromaniacs who just enjoy doing that sort of thing, which is always part of the scene, and how much is being done, or in practice, you might say, for this moment of crisis when they wish to have fires going all over the country or whole regions at a time.
Right.
I don't know the answer to that, but we can't just poo-poo it and say, well, it's all just arsons or lightning strikes. I don't know, but I do know this, and that is that the communist strategy for revolution is to deliberately set fires, massive fires, as many as possible, all at the same time, so that the rescue units and the firefighting units cannot deal with it. And that's for the purpose of creating destruction and panic and fear. Fear, of course, is the greatest tool they have. If they can keep the American people in constant fear of some kind of loss of life or property, then they're not going to do much. They're just going to say, gee, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? What are we going to do? And they'll sit back and wait for their government to do something about it. And what they don't realize is if these agents are in the government itself, which they always try to be, that's one of their first objectives, is how to penetrate into the government itself. Then if they're waiting for the government to help them, well, it's not going to happen. So I don't know to what extent the existing fires fit that category, but I am confident that if the day comes when they decide to, give the signal, they won't be started by arsonists, they won't be started by pyromaniacs. They'll be started by political arsonists for that purpose, just to create destruction and fear.
Right.
Well, we just had a pretty big event out here on the West Coast. I'm in Southern Oregon, and week before last, all those fires started right here. It was perfect timing what happened out here. Like, we had the 60-mile-an-hour winds, and then all of a sudden, like 200-300 fires were set off at the same time, all up and down the I-5 corridor through California, Oregon, and Washington. And it really did, kind of hit home with some people that I know out here. I'm like, the senator and the governor were out in the public telling people to not report arsonists, not report that people were setting things on fire. And, we were finding people with gas cans and delayed electronic explosive devices, setting them up near hay bales and lots of different stuff. And they've caught probably 15 or 20 here in Oregon alone already that were initiating that exact thing, that exact trigger that you were referencing in the video, where they feel like they're losing, they do feel like they're losing control of the city of Portland and stuff to law and order as opposed to chaos. They want to implement chaos.
Well, yeah, and the tragic part about that story is that, as you just said, they caught 15 or 20 of them. But what did they do with them? What do we know about them?
Well,
they probably let them go.
They let them go.
Yeah, they let them go.
That's the point.
The guy set 6 more fires.
They arrest a few of these rioters that are burning buildings, and they arrest them. Okay. And then they let them go.
Yeah.
That tells you that the agents that I was talking about are in the government. They are in the government. They let them go. They do not want to prosecute these people. They're part of the enemy.
And even the prosecutors are saying that they're not going to do any criminal prosecutions on these crimes as well in Washington and in Oregon and California. It's unbelievable. It's
a lot of the people they picked up already had records, should have been in jail to begin with.
Yeah. So that's the part that I think we need to focus on, is why is the existing governmental structure not doing its job? If we just enforce the laws that already exist, none of these people would be operating. They would all be behind bars. We know, or they know who they are. But in most cases, they're their friends, you see.
They're friends.
That's the problem.
That's right.
We're not focusing on the real problem. Why doesn't the government, from the top down, at the top, let's call a spade, why do they let George Soros free? He's the guy funding all of this. They don't do anything about it. They just say, my goodness, look what Soros is doing. Huh? If you and I were to do anything even 1/10 of that, we'd probably be in the electric chair.
We sure would. We sure would.
That's a clue.
That's right. That's absolutely a clue. All right. So I'm just trying to fix this audio. I cannot believe it seems like when you're over the target, Mr. Griffin, they kind of mess with your technology. It's very amazing here on the Matrixxx Groove Show. Let me tell you. So we had what happened? So remember the actors back in the 50s and 60s. Ronald Reagan, when he was an actor, the McCarthyism. All the Hollywood people saying, "Hey, we've got communism in Hollywood. We've got all of this stuff happening to us." Who else came out? I mean, just so many people. And now today we're finding out that China is owning Hollywood. So instead of going to maybe the Russian style, if in our thinking, I think communism was all started by these folks over there in China, but they own $100 million loans of $100 million to Paramount and Fox and Columbia. So they don't. Jack Ma is doing a lot with Spielberg, and Spielberg signed a big contract with them. And when we showed that here on the show, it got censored by a website called Youku, which is Chinese YouTube, that Mitt Romney's behind. As you keep doing this digging, I mean, they're funding both sides of the fence as well. So when you were back, where did it go? How come communism kind of went away? We went to war, Russia, it was ended, but we didn't give them the markets like we've given them with China. Did they move all of their stuff offshore to China? Is that where the Federal Reservists sent their stuff? Just thoughts on that.
I think the problem with that question is we're using the word they.
They.
Who are they? What I discovered a long time ago is that communism and their alleged opposite, Nazism or fascism, are not opposites at all. They're exactly the same thing. Once you peel off the label and you take down the flag so you can't see the swastika versus the hammer and sickle, and you look at the ideology that motivates their leaders. If you read Mein Kampf and you compare Mein Kampf next to the Communist Manifesto, so here you've got Adolf Hitler and Karl Marx both writing their tomes of what and why and how they're going to take over the world. And if you didn't have the cover to look at, you would be hard-pressed to know which book you were reading. They are exactly the same in terms of their ideology. That was one of the things I discovered to my amazement in the early 1960s. And then I went further. I started to read the writings of Mussolini and Mao Zedong and all the collectivists out there. And I found the same thing. And so the bell went off inside my head. I said, my gosh, we're talking about people who we think are opposites and enemies of each other just because they fight each other for territory.
It's all pretend, kind of.
Well, it's not pretend. They kill each other. They torture each other. They hate each other. But it's not because of their beliefs. Right. It's because of their competitors. They both want to be rulers of the world, and they want to be at the top of the pyramid. Mm-hmm. And so they'll fight. But now, once you get over that, they work together perfectly because their common enemy is us. If we know what we're doing and we don't fall for the trap of saying, well, who do you want to support, the communists or the Nazis?
Right.
Which is what we do when we say, who do you want to support, the Republicans or the Democrats or something? I mean, well, take a look at what they actually believe, not their rhetoric, not what they talk about, but
what they actually do.
Not what they actually do, what they vote for. That was the whole thing of that video that you dug up, the More Deadly Than War, is that there are two kinds of revolutions, the violent one, but the most important is the nonviolent one. And if you read the communist literature, which as then and now, it hasn't changed, the whole purpose of the violent revolution in America, at least, is to scare people into accepting the nonviolent one, which is the legislative process by which we pass law after law after law until finally we're at communism. But it's not called communism. It's called socialism, or it's called Americanism, or it's called the New Deal. Progressivism. They give it some other name, but it's the same thing. So who is they? They're all the same, you see.
Right.
So it isn't that it's now in China. It's still here. It's the people in China and the people here that are playing both. They're fighting each other, right?
Yeah.
Oh, those bad people in China. Look at who's saying that. They're doing the same thing.
That's
The
right.
ones that are saying, look what the Chinese are doing with their social credit system over there and their lockdowns and everything. But we're going to get it here as soon as we can. You know?
Right. Yeah, we're working on importing it.
We're working on it, so don't worry. We're not far behind. So who are they? See, we have to understand that they are the people who think alike. And I think the best word for them is they're collectivists. They believe in this principle, this ideology called collectivism. And that includes all of this group. Once we understand that, then we have some hope of knowing who our enemy is. Otherwise, we'll be turning to people we think are our friends merely because they speak against them over there, you know?
Right.
But we don't look at them here and what the people who are speaking against them over there, we find out that the them over here are actually doing the same thing.
And I think that speaks a little bit to just the whole idea of America and kind of the stand against America is like we're supposed to be of the mind of responsibility. Like we're supposed to be responsible for our own actions, responsible as human beings to other human beings. And that kind of teaching over the last half a decade or 50 years or so has really degraded people's perspective that you are responsible for the situation you find yourself in.
Well, you are. I mean, at least you're responsible for how you respond to the situation. But it's easy to say that, but we mustn't be too harsh on people because if you deny them information, deny them knowledge, if they don't know the truth, if you feed them propaganda, they can still be very good people, but do exactly the opposite of what they should be doing. And yes, you can say, well, they should be more curious. They should be more questioning. They should know better because they should read a little history. They should understand that the biggest problems always come from authority. In other words, it's organized crime is always more dangerous when it's in the government than when it's in the private sector. It's organized crime in both cases, but it's always more dangerous when it's in the government sector because people have been trained to trust their government just because it's government. They don't visualize the idea that criminals could move from the private sector into government and turn the government into a syndicate, a crime syndicate,
or
which
a
is what
cartel.
usually happens when people don't. Well, when people aren't paying attention, that's what happens.
Right.
I think that's a large that's a large part of what the situation is today. All these people are working together, whether it's Pelosi out there and all the California people or the New York people, like they're all cooperating with having illegals brought here. They're all cooperating with having the different drugs and stuff coming here from South America. This whole thing is working together around the world. And, it's refreshing to see so many people currently coming to the conversation to understand that, the things aren't as they were printed in the school books. And as a matter of fact, they're quite the opposite.
Yes, and I think that one of the reasons that we have this thing called the Red Pill University and the Red Pill Expo, which maybe we'll talk about in a minute, is so that people who really want to know what the truth is, the truth seekers, as we like to call ourselves, have a place where they can find the answers to these questions. We don't pretend in our group that we know everything because that would be stupid.
Right.
We learn things every day. But we've learned a lot along the way, and we've learned enough to have a feeling for what is truth and what isn't truth. And we're usually not wrong, or sometimes we're terribly wrong. But the point is that we try and bring together all of the experts. And by that, I mean the people who have risen to high positions in their professions or in their field of activity in their life, whatever it is, and have taken the red pill and discovered that, what they thought was true and that they would have defended to the death, they discovered later was not true. And it's better, I think, for us to learn by the mistakes of others than by learning from our own mistakes, although the learning by your own mistakes is the most effective usually.
Yes.
But anyway, so the point I'm trying to lead up to is that when we really decide to become students about this war that we're in, will understand that this is not traditional war as it always has been, where two armies or more line up against each other and they all wear uniforms that are different colors and they all have patches on their shoulders and carry flags that are different. This war is a war that rises between our own citizens on our own soil, all of the same nationality, in many cases of the same religion, in many cases of the same race, the same economic status. It cuts across all levels because it's ideological in nature. Many people still haven't grasped that. They think, oh, it's the Chinese, or it's the Germans, or it's the Jews,
right,
or it's the black people. They want to find some category of human being, or it's a nationality or something. Because that's more simple. That's the way it kind of used to be. They don't realize that since the time of the French Revolution onward, it hasn't been like. It's a war for the mind. It's the war for the loyalties and the passions of people. Once they understand that, then they're ready for the next lesson, which is, well, what are the strategies of this war? How do they fight this war? And one of the things you will discover that the most powerful weapon they use is controlled opposition. They know. Now, this is important to what we're going through, this awakening of the people, wanting to know the truth and saying, you've gone too far. Forced vaccinations, we're not going to do that. You're taking away too much of our freedom. We're not going to do that. Our enemies knew that was going to happen long ago. And they decided not just to sit back and wait until it happens and see, well, what are we going to do when it happens? They created blueprints probably 50 years ago for what is happening today. This is Plan B7 in their book. They have a plan for everything. And the most powerful feature in all of those strategies I've learned is controlling your own opposition. They don't wait for genuine opposition to come up. They say it's going to happen, so we will put our man forward or our woman forward. And they will say exactly everything that the people are clamoring to hear them say. But they will work for us so that in the end, they will collapse and be defeated. This is the most important thing we must learn to look out for in our battle because it is our enemy's favorite weapon.
That's
okay?
Right.
Yeah, I'm getting ahead of most of your viewers, I suppose, because all they want to know, unfortunately, is who are you going to vote for?
Yeah.
That's the extent of it. Are you going to be a Republican or a Democrat? Who are you going to vote for?
Yeah.
Oh, I like this. Well, I don't like this guy, but I hate that person, so I'll vote for this person. Lesser of two evils.
Well, you're gonna.
As long as that's where we're stuck, we lose.
Exactly, and I'm tired of evil, lesser or none.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's
G. Edward, you are talking to one of the most red-pilled audiences on YouTube. They're a very lovely bunch. We've got about 1,400 people watching right now live. And I just want to welcome, if you're just joining us, this is G. Edward Griffin. G. Edward Griffin is the author of The Creature from Jekyll Island. And it's an amazing book. If you haven't got it, get it. Also, he's having an amazing event. He's actually returning to the crime on October 10th and 11th in Jekyll Island. And that's Jekyll Island, Florida. So let's take a look at your lineup and talk about this a little bit.
Yeah, Jekyll Island, Georgia. But yeah, man, it really is. It's really fascinating to see the conversation because what we're starting to see out there are candidates that are rejecting the Republican Democrat diatribe and really starting to think more along the centrist lines of the Constitution and what it really means to be in favor of the Constitution. And so, what we've been trying to encourage people to do is get more involved in their communities, on their councils, on their committees, with vetting their sheriff and understanding the power of the sheriff and who he really is in a constitutional republic, and then finding the candidates that put the Constitution first. Really, we want people up there that won't vote on bills that subvert the Constitution, and it's like really it's like a 1-2 thing, but people have to wake up to see why it is they love their country before they decide to get out there and support it.
Yeah, and if I may add a comment to that, it's more than just saying, are you going to support the Constitution or not? Because they'll all say, of course. But then their idea of supporting the Constitution is different than the founding fathers.
Because
like progressive, like it's a breathing, living document or whatever.
Yeah. So that's not enough to say you're a constitutional sheriff or I'm for the Constitution. That's a bunch of junk. You got to say, well, let's forget the Constitution. What if the Constitution had never been written? Now let's talk.
Right.
Let's talk principles.
Mm-hmm.
Are you for taking away this liberty? What is the proper function of the state? That's a good place to start. Well, the proper function of the state is, by almost definition, it's legalized coercion. It's legalized. You can force a person, if you're a government agent and you got the authority, supposedly the consent of the governed, to use coercion, physical force, and to use lethal force if necessary. For what purpose? It's not just for any purpose you want to, not just because you want somebody to vote the right way or we shoot you. It's not because we want you to close your shop on Sunday or we shoot you. What is the limit that the state can use coercion, even lethal force, to do? This is the question nobody asks, Constitution or not. And the answer is, well, where does the state get its power to do these things? Well, ideally, we all like to think it comes from the people themselves. So now the question is, what can an individual use force for? Lethal force, if necessary. And the answer comes clear. You can use force against your fellow human beings to defend your life and your liberty.
That's right.
Correct.
Nobody would challenge that, or very few would challenge that.
That's right.
That's it.
In a lot of
And the
states.
only reason you can use it to defend your property is because you need your property to defend your life and your liberty.
That's right.
Property sneaks in because it's the only way that you can defend your life and liberty. If you don't have property, you're through. So you can use lethal force as an individual to defend your life, liberty, and property, and nothing more. So that is all you can delegate to the state. That is the only legitimate function the state has, is to defend your life, your liberty, and property. And if you want anything else, to give you an education or buy you insurance or housing or food or tell you what to think or entertain you, give you a vacation, bury you properly, all of these things, it doesn't come under that category. That's where we got to stop talking about the Constitution and talk about what the Constitution means.
Right.
Good point.
And there's many different interpretations, like we were just mentioning. Yeah. Great points there, Mr. Griffin. So here we go. This is the Expo speakers. Look at this. You got G. Edward Griffin. There he is, right there.
I'll be there. You'll have to listen to me again.
There he is. Mr. David Icke, Mickey Willis. He's the gentleman that did Plandemic. I mean, you've got a really great lineup here.
Did you have to read his title there? He says, he tells a story how a recovering socialist came to produce the documentary Plandemic, the most banned and most viewed internet film in history.
That's amazing. So he's a recovering socialist. That's amazing.
Oh, definitely. Well, he was really in the left-wing camp. He was a Hollywood guy. Mm-hmm. He traveled with Bernie Sanders and their media team, and that's where he started to get his education. He saw what Sanders' supporters were like and what they were expecting him to do when he was agreeing to it, and that was his first wake-up call. Just like mine was picking up that little pamphlet.
Yeah, yeah. Mine was picking up The Creature from Jekyll Island.
Yeah.
Your pamphlet. Here we go. This is so then we got Del Bigtree, Vaxxed, if you remember that. Andrew Kaufman, and he's the pandemic fraud runs deeper than you think. If the public knew the underlying germ theory was wrong, there would be no vaccine sales. Here. Bradford Weeks, Dr. Bradford Weeks, talking about hydroxychloroquine as treatment and other therapeutic treatments for COVID-19. Amazing. And yeah, what is the hydroxychloroquine is like 5 cents a pill, as opposed to here's a vaccine for thousands of millions of dollars. Alex Newman, Imaginary Pandemic. So he's talking about the acceptance of a cashless society. This would be an amazing guy to see. Also, Cynthia McKinney, who's a hero.
She is amazing. Yeah. I love her.
She's a former Democrat congresswoman from Georgia, equal opportunity critic to those in both parties and all races who participate in identity politics. That would be a great one. Carrie Rivera fears that she will be arrested if she returns to the U.S. homeland. Why? She helped 1,500 children recover from autism. This would be an amazing one. I tell you, the autism epidemic, that's a pandemic. In my opinion, I know so many beautiful, beautiful children that are affected, with beautiful parents that are doing the best things that they can for their children. And Carrie Rivera, this would be a good one for them. Sheriff Richard Mack, Shady, we love this guy.
Oh, I really love him, and I would love the time to sit down and talk to him for a little bit. He is an amazing patriot.
Mm-hmm. Then you got John Rappaport. I've heard of him before. No More Fake News, if you remember him. He's been exposing politics since 1982. Double X, who's a retired military airline pilot, world class researcher, and talk show host. The street terrorists of today were trained by the street terrorists of the 70s. Interesting. Tim Ray, founder of UI Media Network and host of Frequency Wars and Awaken Atlanta. He'll be discussing the sleepless masses finally are waking up. Here's how to speed up the process. Donna Fiducia, former Fox News anchor. We know her. And the weaponization of weaponization of news. Randy Pinocci, Montana Public Service Commissioner. He'll be there. And let's see who else you got.
What a lineup you got there, Mr.
Don't you have anybody else, Mr. Griffin? I mean, this is not good enough.
Scroll to the top again, to the very top of the page.
Yes, sir.
A couple of those I have yet to put little pictures in. They're already in the big part. But at the very top, look on the left. I get a kick out of Petrea Patrick. Scroll down.
Here he is.
The first one on the left underneath my frame. This girl, yeah.
Oh, her right here.
Yeah, she's producing a documentary called "The Titanic Never Sank."
Oh, wow!
The greatest marine insurance fraud in history.
Yeah, where they switched out the ships.
Yeah, that's what they did. Yep, that was the Olympia.
They switched the names on the Olympia, right?
That's what they did. It was the Olympia, Olympic that went down, and she's got the goods. I'll tell you, and how they did that is just amazing.
Now, weren't the people on the Titanic allegedly from people that would be against the Federal Reserve?
Well, that's a common story, and people ask me about that a lot. I have not yet been able to authenticate that story. I mean, the Astors were on there, and there were some people on there that might have been critical of the Federal Reserve. I don't know that, actually, because I haven't been able to verify it.
Gotcha.
But even so, as far as I could tell, those people were not in a position to do much about it.
Right.
I mean, they were not active in Congress like J.P. Morgan, his group was.
What if I told you there was a Podesta that survived?
Yeah, I have a feeling that's just one of those urban myths that sprung up, but I'm not 100% certain. But I'm still looking for documentation on that.
Sure. So more digging. We'll dig on that, guys. That's amazing. But yeah, this is going to be amazing.
And look, don't forget Robert Kiyosaki up here.
Oh, there he is.
Yeah.
Oh yes, look at his book that he's got there.
Yeah, he's got my book. Well, the reason he's holding my book, he says, "I'm coming to Jekyll Island." Oh, by the way, I got to tell you, none of our speakers and none of our management, myself included, none of us draw a penny out of this. We're all volunteers.
Wow.
And that's amazing for Robert, because I don't think it's a secret, and he wouldn't mind my saying so, but he draws $50,000 for an appearance.
Oh, wow.
And he's coming at his own dime just to be there. He said, "I always want to be at the Red Pill Expo."
Wow.
So, and he's holding my book because he's saying the reason I'm coming to Jekyll Island is not to visit Jekyll Island, but because that was the scene of the crime for the Federal Reserve, and I want to see it.
This is it. And how did they pass that? Didn't they try to pass that with the Republicans at first? I think I recall reading.
Well, yeah, they did, yeah.
And then,
of course, they said the Republicans. Well, that's the political party of the super rich,
right?
So
and then they got a Democrat.
They got somebody from the Democrat Party to sponsor the bill. Well, that was different. Democrats are different. They're not the super rich. I mean, those are guys with like dirt under their fingernails.
Yeah,
like Ted Kennedy, you know.
Yeah, and then there's a little bit of Ted Kennedy. Oh boy, he's got a lot of dirt under that. How many?
I'm leaving that one there.
How many closets does he need for all those skeletons? I'll tell you.
There's a lot in there.
For sure.
Yeah.
Wow. So,
and of course, Del Bigtree is on fire. He's going to lay it out straight. But he's actually Del has a sort of a positive story. He says, basically what he's going to tell us is the reasons that he thinks that the awakening process is happening rapidly enough that even though it might be a very close call, he thinks that we can actually raise the rabble, so to speak, raise the awareness of the masses to the point where the political agenda will have to back down.
Right.
So
that's
I
what
hope
we
he's
think
right,
too.
He's going to tell us why he thinks so.
Yeah, Del Bigtree. I think we might agree with him, Shady. As well.
And we're definitely seeing the conversation, out there in the mainstream now, where they're starting to talk about this new vaccine that's coming out, and now we have the whole side of the political spectrum that's been telling us that there's nothing wrong with the vaccine for the last 50, 60 years, are now all of a sudden sitting there saying, "Oh, I don't know if I trust the vaccine." So the conversation is shifting out in the
I don't want a vaccine.
Arena.
If I want a vaccine, I'll get one. Don't make me,
I don't know if your audience is familiar with Andrew Kaufman, Dr. Kaufman, but this is one of the most profound presentations I think you're going to hear at the expo. Kaufman is challenging the foundational assumption that viruses even exist.
Correct.
Now think about that. And we all know that's impossible. We all know viruses exist because we've been told that ever since we were born.
I've had one, right?
Vaccinated against viruses. Of course they exist. But he's going to suggest that maybe they are something called exosomes.
Right.
That we have known about for a long time. And the only difference between exosomes and viruses, they look the same. They contain the same toxic elements, but the only difference is that the exosomes are the good guys. They are removing these toxic elements from our bodies into the bloodstream, and so they can flush the toxins out. They're our friend. They're part of our immune system. Whereas viruses have been theorized. They never been proven to exist. That's an interesting fact. They have been theorized that they are these little things that are putting toxic elements into the cells. Well, what if they're wrong about that? Then here we are developing vaccines that's supposed to kill something that doesn't even exist.
Right.
And if it did kill an exosome, it would probably be harmful to us.
Correct.
Interesting. Yeah. Very interesting. I don't know if he's right, but I'm going to.
Well, I'll tell you that I've definitely I've went down that rabbit hole, and there is a large amount of evidence to suggest that the whole idea of the viruses and the way that they weaponized the AMA against the people back in the early 1900s and twisted all the research and then kept all the research within the walls of the university and nobody else could have a voice. I mean, this really, his research is top notch.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, anyway, it's something that'll be there. So if you're looking for something to stimulate your thought processes, this is the place to go.
This is it, and that's it. This is the Red Pill Expo. It is 2020, October 10th through 11th, Jekyll Island, Georgia. And I tell you,
I have to say that we know most people can't come, unfortunately. But so for them, we do have a live stream, and it's pretty cheap. So
excellent.
You can attend either way.
So here you go. Look at it. It starts in 1 week, 4 days, 16 hours, 49 minutes, and 17 seconds. But what you've known something is wrong. I mean, look at me. My name is the Matrixxx, and here's the register to attend. Click that right there, and you can be on the live stream and watch all these amazing speakers. Wow, you've got a great setup here. And does this tie into the Red Pill University as well? Oh, did I lose you?
Yeah, I'm here.
There we go.
Was that a question?
Yeah, and this ties into the Red Pill University as well?
Oh, yes. The Red Pill Expo is produced by the Red Pill University. Red Pill University is there all the time, 24/7. And it's a source of information that just keeps coming all the time. It's like the expo on 24 hours a day. But it's more than that, because one of the most important features of the university is to build local groups. We call them campuses. We think that we know that in order to build a counterforce against this enemy that we find entrenched in our media, in our government, in all of our institutions, in order to fight that, we have to have boots on the ground. We can't all do it through cyberspace. We have to get out of our doors. We have to meet with each other. We have to get to know each other eyeball to eyeball. We have to form committees. We have to support candidates, not just wait to see what candidates they put up for us to vote for. We have to create our own candidates. We have to become active in local political programs. All of this means local organizations. And that's why the university is so important, because it'll become the foundation for campuses to accomplish all of those goals.
That's excellent, because, we've got to take it from the bottom to the top. I mean, we think, we're just going to elect the president. That's going to happen. I don't think so.
Way.
We've got to take control.
No, it's all over. By the time you see the guy's name on the ballot, it's all over. It doesn't make an awful lot of difference which one you vote for. I hate to say that. Probably a lot of people will be angry for me to say that. But if you doubt it, just look back in history to starting at about World War I. We've gone from one party to the next, one party to the next, one candidate to the next. No matter what they say, the major policies have never changed.
Right. And that's what's happening. right there. I mean, look at this. You got some. Look at what you. This is a great. I'm just looking at your Red Pill University. It's very, very good here. A lot of great topics that I'd like to delve into even more.
Yeah, well, our goal is to make this the largest repository of information of this kind in the world. And frankly, even though we've been at it for only about a year, I think we've already arrived at that point. I don't know of any other source anywhere that has this kind of information, and we're just starting.
That's right. And we're just starting. And it's only the best is yet to come. Here, as we all learn about what the Constitution is, learn the real history. And I think Napoleon said it best: "Is history is a fable, and it's told by the winner." And that's what's been happening through years and years and years. And God bless you, Mr. Griffin, for actually having the courage to come out and talk about the communists back in the day. When the videos that we saw earlier, thank you for writing this book and opening a lot of people's minds into what the Federal Reserve System actually is. I really appreciate everything that you've done. Well,
thank you for that, but please remember what I said earlier. Yep. I can't help myself. I discovered I had a Crusader gene, and it just won't stop vibrating. So I just have to do it.
Hey guys, and if you guys are out there in the audience, what do you think? Did you guys enjoy Mr. Griffin? Let's see a 17 out there if you guys have enjoyed it.
I tell you what, I would just like to say to you, sir, reading your book so long ago and understanding and getting into this stuff in a time in my life when early, even before the internet, and I was listening to William Cooper on the radio. They used to have in America, we used to actually have people that would speak about controversial things on the air all across our country. And they have degraded that conversation so thoroughly and zoned everybody into like Facebook and Twitter and all these different caveats of the internet. But we got to understand, you got to get out of those areas and into the real information. But I mean, just for you, sir, you woke me up a long time ago, and your research was very key for me to be a crusader as well. And I've stayed on the path my whole life, and I'm really just excited to be here on the cusp of so many people who are now like kind of tired of it and really wanting to start to pay attention and participate in their country, because the country doesn't really work right unless we're participating in it.
Oh, well said.
Well, that's right. If we don't take an interest in politics, and I don't mean partisan politics, but I mean right. in the concepts that we're talking about, the political and social economic concepts, if we don't take an interest in those things, we will be ruled forever by people who do. So we have no choice. If we want to be free, we have to defend our freedom, and this is a place to start.
That's right.
I tell you, it couldn't be much better said than that, Matrixx.
That's right. Wow, guys. That is amazing. So do you have anything that you'd like to say as we conclude this? You've been so generous with your time. We've gone a little bit over that hour and 10 minutes, sir. What would you like to say as your parting thoughts? Obviously, we want people to get out there and go to the Red Pill Expo. I might even try to get out there as well. And that's, what is that, October 10th and 11th at Jekyll Island. What are your parting thoughts? What would you like to tell our audience here that, they're very, very well versed on the Federal Reserve, thanks to a lot of your research as well. And what's your parting thoughts? What would you like to say to somebody that, is just now going through this? Oh my gosh, pretty much everything I know is a lie. It's a hard thing to grasp, isn't it?
Well, I think that's a good starting point, because most people do not want to believe that anything that they know and have internalized is a lie. It's hard. And I understand that. I went through it. I'm still going through it on a few things.
Sure.
I don't want to let go of. But sure, I don't know. I think I probably said everything I need to say, but there probably a final thought would be this. In this pandemic theater, people are wondering, well, could I go? Could I even go out of my house? What if the airplane stopped flying, or what if there's a riot, or what if can think of all kinds of things that might happen. What if the event is canceled? And I can't guarantee that it won't be canceled, So I got to thinking about that before we started, and I remembered, I think I've got the name right, it was Admiral Farragut, I think, who was an admiral of this was during the Civil War, and there was a naval battle going on at the Bay of Mobile. And so Farragut has his ships there, and they had water mines spread across the entrance to the bay. And they called them torpedoes in those days. Today, when we say torpedoes, it means one of those long things with a propeller at the end, and they travel through the water to strike the ship and blow it up. But this was before the day of electric propellers, and they called the mines torpedoes. So as Farragut moved into the bay, his flotilla there, all of a sudden, a couple of his ships go boom, boom, and went down. And all the captains of the other ships put their engines in reverse, and they sort of backed away to, what do we do now? And the tide of the river was banging them together, clustering them together. They were in confusion, and it was going to be a terrible, terrible situation.
Wow.
And the story is told in different ways, but by people who were there, survivors that told about it. But it all comes down to the thing that the admiral climbed up to the mast of one of these ships so he could see the operation from a distance. And he could see that his ships were banging together and that they were all going to be destroyed and the battle would be lost if they didn't do something. And he shouted down the orders, "Damn the torpedoes and full speed ahead." And that's what they did. They didn't know if they were going to get hit by a mine or what would happen, but they did. They took the risk, and I'm sure that they lost some more ships, but they won the battle. And this isn't an issue of North versus South. This isn't an issue of who were the good guys or the bad guys in that particular battle. This is an issue of courage and making the right decision when you have a very important goal to achieve, and you have to take some risks. If you want to sit around and say, "Gee, how's that all going to turn out? Right. I wonder, could this be damaging? Could we suffer because of it?" You're never going to accomplish anything. So I decided, okay, I'm going to say, "Damn the torpedoes and full speed ahead." I wonder how many others would pick up that chant with me. So that's how I'm going to close this off and say, if you feel comfortable saying to yourself or out loud, "Damn the torpedoes, full speed ahead," then that's my closing thought. I'll see you on Jekyll Island.
Oh, wow. That's amazing. We're going to go to 50 feet, zero bubble, damn the torpedoes, full speed ahead. I love it. I love it. Mr. Griffin, thank you so much for joining us today. I've had an amazing experience. And Shady Groove, let's head out of here. Wow.
Yes, sir. I would like to say to everyone out there, one of the quotes that they attribute to Mr. Griffin is, "To oppose corruption in government is the highest obligation of patriotism." And I could not agree more. And fantastic to have you, Mr. Griffin, with us today. And I tell you, I'm just really over a barrel. I really appreciate the time, sir.
All right. Well, thank you, gentlemen, for inviting me. And we'll see you on the island.
Thank you, Mr. Griffin. I appreciate it. Here we go.
Right, bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Wow. That's amazing. We just had an amazing guest there. G. Edward Griffin, folks. Wow. Shady.
How spectacular was that?
Oh, my gosh. I'm blown away. I know people wanted us to ask him about the Q and everything, but I don't think that's why we had him here. We weren't here to talk about Q with him, but we will go over some Q right now, Shady.
Yes, sir. I think we had a couple come in today. I know we don't have much time here before I got to get out of here.
Yep. So let's just go over the new Q, and we'll step back up. And I've got a lot of stuff for you guys next week, folks. Tomorrow, that I need to go over with you guys. So these are the new Qs. Let's just double check which one is it. This one. 4777.
4777.
Yep. So this one is Comey's brother, Peter Comey, brother James Comey, Clinton Foundation, DLA Piper, conflict of interest, follow the family, think McCabe's wife, focus here, East Africa operations. Ooh, East Africa operations. There they are. A firm commitment to legal education in East Africa. Ooh, shady. There they are. They got lawyers. They got everything. Global office.
Money never flows directly.
Yeah. Follow the money. The money never flows directly. Q. And then
who's buying up large swaths of Africa? China.
China, pet. Yeah, that's right. Here we go. This is something too from HRES 5326 Shady from September 12th, 2016. It's talking about the FBI director Comey would never do anything absolutely perfectly above board. They knew this, Shady. Look at this. This is about Comey. Look at that. But then the article by Patrick Howley, 10th September, came out, and I was shocked. It said, a review of FBI Director Comey's professional history and a relationship shows that Obama cabinet leader, now under fire for his handling of the investigation, Hillary Clinton, is deeply entrenched in the big money cronyism culture in Washington, D.C. And you can read more of that. That's pretty damning right there, Shady.
Yeah, I think that, that might be a little over the target.
Right. This is the next one, Shady. Shaping the Narrative Takes Work, trial date July 12th, 2021. Unusual to have a 1-year gap from arrest to trial. What might be the purpose? Q. And look at this. It talks about Born This Way, sympathy, trying to normalize pedophilia, which they can never normalize it in this country. People are well awake for that crap. And here we go. This is a user, Maxwell Hill, on Reddit. Looks like 2 minutes ago, someone mysteriously sent almost 1 billion in Bitcoin. So is Q asking us to watch this?
This looks, I'm not real sure. I was trying to see exactly. That post was 2 months ago.
3 months ago.
So it's almost making me think that we're supposed to go back and look at the timeline of something moving, sometime around the end of July or whatever.
Maxwell
but it's connected Hill. To her. So maybe this is related to the moving of her being arrested.
This is Ghislaine Maxwell.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. We'll do some more digging and confirm that, but that seems like that could be Ghislaine Maxwell. Yikes.
Ghislaine.
Now we've got 4779 right here, Shady. It's an old one from 4112, very old, May 5th, 2020. Boy, it seems like a long time ago, doesn't it?
Then and now. A lot of drops. Literally 700 drops since May 5th.
I know. Jeez. Then and now, Brennan and Comey assessment, Clapper assist hard push, Justice Department criminal sources. The code, it goes to Solomon Reports. I think I tweeted this out. Yeah, next declassification would flip Russia collusion script, point to effort to hurt Trump. So next declassification could flip Russia collusion script, point to effort to hurt Trump, guys. Knowingly.
But there was just this new Showtime special that says that they were protecting us against Russia wanting to help Hillary or to hurt Hillary and help Trump.
Oh, that's not right, Shady.
I don't know. They may have facts mixed up over at Showtime.
This is panic in D.C. Guess what they're panicked about, Shady?
Oh my goodness! They're passing legislation about you, beautiful anons.
HRES 1154. Why couldn't they make that add up to 17? At least do us that favor.
Yeah, come on. Act like you're on the same page.
So you got condemning QAnon and rejecting the conspiracy theories it promotes.
Which ones?
Yeah, which one's that?
The ones about
history, secret cabals, genocide, acts of terrorism. This seems pretty factual to hear.
Well, are you going to condemn the one about the deep underground base under the Denver airport? Are we going to condemn the one about child trafficking across the border? Or are we going to condemn the one about uranium one to Canada? Or are we going to condemn the one about nuclear secrets to North Korea? Or the one about Google helping them?
What about genocide from the COVID flu from China?
I tell you, I can't figure out which one the QAnon promotes.
How about the secret cabal that's called the Bidens taking billions of dollars from your backs, folks? Whereas
the Bidens, Ukraine, you name it.
Whereas QAnon is a movement promoting a collection of unfounded. They haven't proved me wrong yet.
No.
Then they got all this crap that is not me. What about the Antifa people? Whereas a man set 6 fires. Whereas a man, shot a Trump supporter from the prayer group. Whereas a man. Where is that resolution, Shady?
I didn't see that one come across the wire.
No?
No.
All right. Well, you know what? House of Representatives, I'm
Maybe
comfy.
We could get them motivated.
I'm comfy over here. Shady. Wow, guys. All right. So with that, guys, I think we're going to head out of here. We had a great show with G. Edward Griffin. Whew, Shady. Sorry about, I don't know what happened with the audio, folks, but it is what it is.
Well, we had a little bit of audio issues at the beginning, but Mr. Griffin was really just speaking there. He was letting you guys get to know him a little bit better and did a great job as we were sort of working in the background to get it settled down. So I don't think it really affected the program too much. And I tell you, I wasn't kidding whenever that man is a pioneer in truth.
Yeah.
He really did break the brain-mind barrier for a lot of people. I can't remember his name, but the guy that wrote None Dare Call It Conspiracy and all these different things that were written back then. The information was there, but you had to go look for it. And then the internet came along, and then the information was there, and then they removed it. You remember back in the early 90s, everybody's website had links to everybody else's website. We could move around and find information, and now you notice that doesn't exist anymore. And so a big part of this Q operation is to help give you information for you to think for yourself, and you're more than welcome to do so however you want. But man, I tell you, what a pioneer, and what a watershed moment for the show here. That was impressive.
Yeah, it was very, very impressive, and very honored to have him here. I tell you. By the way, guys, I don't know if you've seen this. We've got a news in thematrixx.com/news. And we've got that. Look at that. There's G. Edward Griffin, More Deadly Than War. There it is.
If the mods would drop that for you guys, we have been working so hard over here on the site, and so we want you guys to see a little bit of this stuff. But we have our own news aggregator on the site now, to where we're pulling in the headlines and we're getting the stuff that's relevant kind of up front. And so just please get over there and maybe support the channel a little bit while you're there, because man, we've really, I think, upped our game a lot here in the last 6 months.
Yeah, absolutely. And by the way, we got the news too over here. This one is where we're going to be, Shady. This is the QCon Live /Phoenix. If you go to that website, it is Saturday, October 17th, 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. Pacific. And register now at QCon Live /Phoenix, PHX, right? Get over there. Check it out, and you can use the code ITM17 or Shady17 if you get a ticket for what is it? Yeah, if you get a
Patriot Party Rocks.
Ticket for you get that discount for the Patriot Party Rocks with our Q code, right? ITM17 or Shady17. You get the Patriot Party Rocks ticket and free admission to see us, guys. And the Patriot Party Rocks is on the Friday, so it's Friday and Saturday, or you can just come for one day. Come see us, guys, at the Scottsdale Plaza Resort.
Yeah, I really appreciate Chris for all his hard work on getting this put together, and it's going to be, Matrixxx and I are going to be there, and it's going to be, a longer presentation. We're going to have Christian and Eric there with us, and some other great Patriot presenters that we're talking to right now. And so I'm really looking forward to getting down to Arizona for a minute.
Shady, I'd like to maybe, see if we can get some local people like Mac, if you want to come, and maybe Brad Umholtz, who's out there, just regular people that have been following Q, and maybe we just do a panel and interview them. I mean, that's who it's about. It's about you guys. It's about
absolutely.
You guys. And with that, Shady, much love. We'll see you tomorrow, 1300 hours.
See you tomorrow.
We got a lot to cover tomorrow, guys. Do not
hold on to your hats.
Miss it. We're going to go back to the regular time, 1300 hours Eastern Standard Time. Thank you very much for coming. I still don't have sound.